Athens City Council. It's Monday, September 10th, 2018. And tonight we have three committee meetings, the first of which will be the Transportation Committee with Councilmember Kotsis chairing.
President Nisley, thank you. We only have one item to cover tonight on Transportation Committee, and that is the Northwest Bikeway Spur. This was the third phase of the project. Basically, we have been alerted by ODOT that we have to realign some of the bikeway path on this section, and we're looking for an additional $100,000 from the city to make this project complete. What we learned from ODOT was that since this path leaves the road bed more than 100 feet, it starts to fall under some different guidelines. So it's considered a forest, and so at that point we have some trees that we actually have to retain in there, and it's going to cost a little bit more to go around those, and then to save to keep the stream at a to protect the stream, we also have to build some retaining walls in order to hold the path up. And so that is why there's an additional cost of the city. Now, we want to remember that the city did receive a TAP grant from ODOT for a little bit over $310,000. This was actually, that was from ODOT. The path was originally going to cost us $141,000. Now we're going to add an additional $100,000 to that price tag. This also changes the completion date, which would be, let me look that up. I did have a conversation with Jessica Dine earlier today. Completion project date is now June 2019. And the $100,000 is just for construction costs. There's and that's all I have to deliver on this one. Do we have questions from the committee? Yes.
Has the money been budgeted to the appropriate section that we have it available, or do we have to take special funds?
That would be from the mayor. If you.
I believe that we do, but let me confirm that with the Director for Engineering and Public Works, that there is money there. I'll find out for you, Member McGee.
Thank you.
What stage is the plan currently, or the project? Where are they now?
The project did not go out to bid. So basically, we approved, I believe it was June 18th, we approved to move forward on this project. So the money has been allocated, and now administration is coming forward and asking for the additional funds. So I know earlier on that they were talking about trying to have a fall completion date, and that is no longer up for discussion. So, yes.
Just to make it real clear for the TV audience and the other audience, this is not something that we've already completed and we have to redo. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
It's something that we anticipate doing, and it's just an additional expense.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand your question. That is correct, and your intent. Thank you.
So, and I did actually have a quick conversation with Andy Stone today, and he kind of put the project into some perspective, and that this has been a 20-year process, and so he was, he's of course would like to see it completed to move on to other projects, but.
Okay. And I think Councilmember Butler may have a question.
Please.
Councilman Kent Butler, 131 2nd Street. Could you kindly describe to the general public and the TV audience what part of the bike trail this is and where it's located?
Yes,
Thank you.
And this is phase 3 of the Northwest Bikeway Spur, which hasn't been built yet. So this is continuing from Armitage Road up into University Estates. So this is a climb up into that neighborhood to provide connection to all the community members that live in that neighborhood.
Thank you.
Is it that,
Okay.
with that we are done.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Finance and Personnel Committee. This is chaired by Councilmember Reisner and Mr. Butler. Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance and Personnel Committee, I'll call the roll here. Reisner's present and Butler is present.
Thank you.
Councilmember Crow is absent. Okay. We only have one item to discuss tonight under Finance Personnel. It's called a staffing transfer. The administration would like to shift 1/4 of the cost of one of the two custodians currently in the Community Center Fund 271 to the Recreation Fund 270. And the justification is that one of the custodians spends about 1/4 of their time outside the community center at locations like Arts West and the pool and various park restroom facilities. So this shifts the salary costs from one fund to the other. And does the administration have anything to discuss about it?
No.
No? You have any questions, Member Butler?
Thank you, sir.
Any questions from the audience? Other council members? No? Okay, then the procedure will be on our next council meeting next Monday. We'll bring forward an ordinance authorizing the appropriate transfer over. So that'll be about what we'll do.
Okay, thank you. We now have Planning and Development Committee. It's chaired by Councilmember Fall and Councilmembers Reisner, McGee, and Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I hope you get better.
Thank you.
Tonight, we're talking about results from a parking study that has been conducted by our Assistant Service Safety Director and our planner, Paul Logue, and Ron Lucas. They have a presentation for us this evening about smart technology and uptown parking. We're always interested in. Thank you. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Councilmember Fell. I believe I have a presentation, but I don't know how to put it up here. So,
We'll magic.
Smart technology.
smart technology. So I am awaiting government channel staff to come save the day, and here they come. Do I get it up there?
I just put them up there. They were up there. I just took it down and put it back up.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I did give you a copy of the presentation. I also gave you a copy of the proposed legislative changes. We won't go through all of those. I'll get through the slides and then we can hold our discussion for the end. That would be perfect. So the agenda, we're gonna talk about replacing the age meters that we have currently on Court Street and the surrounding vicinity. We held a pilot project from February 2018 to May 2018, and we'll briefly discuss the parking study, uptown parking study that was conducted by City Planner Paul Logue, and then we'll talk about smart meters, a little financial analysis, and some legislative needs. So if Paul, you'd like to discuss the uptown traffic study or parking study, that'd be great.
Thank you, Ron. Good evening, Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. If I yawn, please don't take that personally. It's been a very long day for me. Woke up a little bit earlier than normal, and I did not have my late afternoon cup of coffee. So please forgive me if I do so. I'm Paul Logue. I'm the planner for the City of Athens. We are currently working on updating the city's comprehensive plan, as many of you know. And as part of that update, one of the things that we began to do very early in the process was a uptown parking study. That is one of the issues that we've constantly been hearing about in Athens. And parking in a downtown or the uptown environment is very tricky because you can't just create parking out of air. We have a very dense built environment uptown, and so to create new parking, we either have to find very tuck-in parking spaces here and there, or we have to tear down buildings to create new surface lots. That's not something that we necessarily want to do. We have a historic district, and so removing buildings to create storage parking would jeopardize the integrity of the uptown district. So earlier this year, I worked with a few interns, and the group of us, we started doing an uptown parking study. There are several components to this. Of course, we worked closely with the Uptown Business Association and the Chamber of Commerce. They put us in contact with a lot of the uptown merchants and business owners and managers so we could have one-on-one interviews with them to better understand their experiences parking, both as people who work uptown and as people who serve customers uptown. And so they know a lot about how their customers use uptown parking, as well as they have staff who also needs to park uptown on occasion. We also did some online survey work, and we did block by block and parking space by parking space counts to better understand how the traffic moves and how cars move through each space during our peak time, which is identified on a typical weekday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And so myself and our interns, we made spreadsheets, and we took clipboards and pens and pencils and our cameras, our cell phones, and we started walking uptown Athens, and we surveyed every parking space every half hour for a 4-hour window. And we took all that data, we put that into spreadsheets. We wrote down the last 5 digits or 4 digits of driver's or license plates so we could see where they moved to, how often they were staying, and how often parking spaces were available. And so a lot of that information we are using to inform this plan, to inform the recommendations that Ron's going to talk about. I think most of you, Councilmember Fall, I believe the parking study was discussed earlier at a committee meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Okay.
brought it up in other
Great.
discussions that we've had. So and they've been, and it's online
It is,
in our
correct.
drive.
Right.
I think.
So there's a few key recommendations that were in that study that Ron's going to talk about, looking at ways to implement. One of which is one of the bigger ones that we heard was that people are frustrated with uptown parking because there's typically only one way to pay, and that's using coin. And we've done a few different things to try to do Park Mobile to create some options. People had frustrations with that because of the way the apps work. So now we've done some pilots with credit cards, but what we heard from people is they want to be able to use coin, they want to be able to use their debit cards, their credit cards, or they want to use an app. They want all of those options. Makes sense, right? The person who only uses coin, if they don't have coin on them, which a lot of people do not in 2018, they're essentially going to gamble that they don't get a parking ticket. And so then your 1 hour worth of time is now a $10 or $20 ticket that you've received because we didn't provide them with opportunities to pay through different mechanisms. So that was a big one that we heard. Another one we heard was that the parking garage was underutilized, and we found that out through our study as well, that even at peak times, there's typically about 60 to 90 parking spaces available in the uptown parking garage. We heard from people who said that they didn't know that the parking garage was there for people to park in. It says city parking on it. They thought it was for city vehicles, so state and city vehicles to be parking there. And then we heard from people saying that there was frustrations about enforcement of parking into the evening. We heard from them that uptown bar and restaurant workers are using those parking spaces going into the evening because they know that parking enforcement stops at a certain time, And so therefore, from that point forward, we have uptown staff that use those parking spaces. And so that actually, that hurts the business, because then customers don't want to come uptown because they assume that there's no parking. And so part of our strategy is to try to open up and rotate parking so that we can support our uptown businesses. So a lot of this, again, this is really about how can we better provide for our citizens, but also how can we get vehicles to rotate in and out so that we have more parking and more people being able to utilize uptown Athens to support our local businesses. And with that, I will leave Ron to get into those details, and I'm available if you have any questions after. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, so the on-street parking meters. I want to pay special attention to this slide. The purpose of on-street parking meters is to cycle parking effectively in order to support local business. That's a key theme that we want to focus on. The smart parking meters, there's a picture of one. I don't know if everyone has had an opportunity to use the smart parking meters that are in the pilot area. These particular meters are from a company named IPS. They are solar powered, and they're single space meters. There is an opportunity to do a yoke where you can have dual space meters, so that we can reduce the amount of meter heads that we do actually have uptown, not meter heads, meter posts. These do have a lot of features. I don't want to read at you, so I'm going to hit the key points of each one of these slides. You do have those to take with you. Multiple payment types is one of the big one of the biggest things that we were focusing on is that we had an opportunity to accept multiple payment types: coin, debit card, credit card. They also accept smart cards. We have a permit system that we can use with the smart meters, and there's also a mobile app. And there are vehicle detection sensors, and what those do is they basically reset the meters when a patron leaves, so that the next person is not doing is not getting free parking. Enforcement and permit management, and the ability to increase revenue 30% by encouraging parking turnover in high demand areas. One of the things that is noticeably happening, if we look at the numbers, and I'll share some of those with you later, is that the tendency to use debit cards and credit cards at these devices increases with the availability of them. By doing that with the smart app that this solution will offer us, is that you will no longer have to pay a 35 cents per transaction fee. It's something that will be included in the cost of the payment to the meter. They're effective because the city can discover parking trends. We have access to real-time and historical data on the fly. That's something that we currently do not have without doing a lot of behind-the-scenes revenue studies. We can enable demand-based and progressive rate structures. That is something that we are looking at changing in the legislative area, is being able to create zones for parking, particularly where do people park, where's the highest demand? So how do we get people to utilize that parking and cycle it more effectively? There's also areas outside of the high demand area that don't get used enough. So how can we push parking into those areas so that they are being better utilized and people do have more on-street parking options? The meters also, so we did the pilot project during the month of February through May of 2018. This slide here breaks down the numbers. It also shows you the actual pilot area itself. So the red line on each side of Court Street, between Union and Washington on the east side, we installed the smart meters. And on the west side, between Washington and the state, we installed the parking meters. Looking at that, the coin revenue from the old parking meters during the pilot was $7,549, and the coin revenue of the smart meters during the pilot was $86.12. Card revenue from the smart meters was another additional $5,360, and from the sensors, we installed the sensors in April. So from April to May of 2018, we reclaimed 2,469 hours of time through the sensors with a value of $1,234.85. The average coin transaction on the smart meters was 43 cents, and the average card transaction on the smart meters was $1.26. Again, the intent is not to make money, is to provide expanded payment options. With the smart parking meters, we'll be able to, there's a lot of things that we can do with the smart meter. We can provide opportunities for citizens to park utilizing multiple payment options. One enforcement solution. This is a very interesting one to me. Currently, our parking enforcement officers have to utilize 3 different tools to enforce a meter. They're looking at their Complex handheld to look at parking through the coin. They're looking at Park Mobile, which they have to do some shuffling around. And currently with the pilot, they're looking at IPS's solution, or the smart meter technology solution. So three different enforcement methods for one parking officer. So when they're walking down the street to enforce a car, they have to check 3 different things. With a smart meter, it's all in one. So basically in real time, I park, I pay with my app. There's a little green light or a red light on the front of that smart meter that will change from red if it's not current to green if it's being used. As soon as I pay, just a few seconds will pass by and that'll turn green. So that lets parking enforcement know that it's legal. That also lets a person driving a vehicle know that that parking meter is taken. So there are some things that we can do from an enforcement standpoint that is going to make it a lot smoother for them. And I'm excited about that. The mobile app will allow citizens to park without paying a transaction fee. One of the complaints that I've heard a lot with Park Mobile is the 35 cents per transaction fee. So putting that into perspective, if I go and I pay my meter, I put in 50 cents through the Park Mobile app, that's a 35 cents transaction fee. That's now 85 cents. An hour went by and I'm not done with my business. I go into Park Mobile and add an additional 30 minutes or an hour. That's another 35-cent transaction fee. So instead of paying $1 for my time, I ended up paying $1.70. And so that's significant. So that won't be something that's passed on to the end user with a smart meter. However, there will be some charges that the city will have to encumber with that offer. We can customize meter payment and messaging and time limits individually or in bulk. So we could put something out there if we want to change zones to a high intensity zone, we can change that on the fly at the back end. With the current system, if we want to change rates on any meter, you have to gear it. So you have to go into each individual meter and gear it back and set it, which is time consuming. Not impossible, but time consuming. But again, all that is being offered through that particular meter is coin. You can't put a credit card in our current meters, and the mobile app charges 35 cents. You can also message on it. So if you want to say, hey, Court Street's going to be closed for this event this week, you can put that on the meters and people will see it. So it's a way to message people, happy graduation, class of 2019. So you can do some things like that. Construction coming on these dates, so if these meters need to be held for a construction project, you can put that out there on the meters. And it's something that we can do. It's not something that we have to do externally. We can just do it through the tools that we have. Enhanced parking options in our metered areas to provide more opportunities for citizens to find available parking. Again, they'll have not only the option to see the lights, but they'll also have a smartphone app that shows you where there's parking available. So I can see that when I'm out. I can see, hey, there's a parking space on Washington Street. Zip over to it, park. Cost. There's a couple options that we can go with. There's a capital purchase for 525 smart meters. It includes the domes and the dome sensors and the batteries, installation, and things of that nature. $443,667.50. There's also 3 lease options that include the same equipment. 36-month option, that's $13,200 a month. A 48 monthly option, $10,085 a month, and a 60 payment monthly option at $82.39 46 cents a month. There's a service fee each month in either case, $4,487.50. These are cell technology, so there is a cellular system that connects all these together. The back-end service of the application with the software, those are things that are included in the service fee. Here's a projected revenue slide. I did make some assumptions here at the bottom of the slide. I assume that meters are filled to about 75% capacity due to things like summer months, winter break, holidays. I assume that tickets will reduce about 25% due to more robust payment options. And as the planner was talking about, some of the frustrations that people may have when they just take the risk. Oh, I have a quarter. I'll see if I can do it. And they get a ticket. So I think that this will reduce those tickets. Card charges are going to impact projected revenue. So those are some things that I assumed. The current revenue, we get about $420,000 from our street meter payments, $350,000 from our tickets, and there's about a $20,000 annual maintenance cost to keep our meters current, for a total of about $750,000. Projected revenue, $1.2 million. About $262,500 from tickets, and the lease payment is $98,873 with the maintenance fees, service fees of $53,850, which would give us a total of almost $1.4 million in projected revenue. And looking at the parking code, we reviewed Athens City Code Section 705 parking regulations. We had a team, myself, Paul Loeb, Code Director Soroy, Police Chief Pyle, Police Captain Harvey, and we reviewed the code. Fire Chief Reimer also assisted. We included language to update roadways and streets. The current code is strictly highways. So there were some challenges there from our police department in terms of enforcement. We added some language allowing the fire chief to require a fire lane during street festivals or events. Added some language to allow for street meters to accept multiple forms of payment, including debit cards, credit cards, and mobile applications. Current code just is coin. Added language to reflect smart meter display screens instead of dials. We also added language reflecting to grant the Service Safety Director the authority to place 2-hour parking, 4-hour parking, 10-hour parking, loading zone, and short-term 20-minute parking. We changed the motorcycle parking pay structure, $12 to $20 for one bike, $20 or $30 for two. And we changed enforcement time from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Also in the parking code changes, we added parking zones and fees. High intensity, $1 an hour. Moderate intensity, 75 cents an hour, which reflects the parking garage. One of the things that we want to do is we want to gear people to park in the parking garage. It is usual that the on-street parking is more expensive than the parking garage because you want to drive people into the parking garage to fill that up and leave spaces available on street for business use. Low intensity stays the same, 50 cents an hour. Short term, this is something that's new. We can have meters that we can offer to patrons that want to go into a coffee shop or any type of quick business like a book center or pick up something from a restaurant. 25 cents for 10 minutes, 50 cents for 20. So we'd space those throughout the uptown area so that we can have access, citizens can have access to those. We also wanted to have council authority to set the rates and the Service Safety Director the authority to change the intensity zones based on use. The intended goals are to keep as much available parking in the high intensity zone for citizen access. We also want to encourage use of the parking garage as we would like to see it utilized more during the work week. Our implementation timeline, we'll need 2 ordinances. The first would be the Service Safety Director authority to purchase or lease the smart meters, and then the parking code changes that you have access to. Installation intended to begin December 2018 during winter break, and new effects taking effect January 1st, 2019. Again, your packet has the proposed parking regulations and the copy of the presentation. And that is all I have. So if you want to have
Great. Thank you. Questions? We'll start at the end there, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm wondering about in terms of the purchase versus lease option on the meters. What happens in terms of maintenance if we're leasing those meters? Something breaks, malfunctions, versus if we purchase it and it breaks or malfunctions.
So part of the service agreement includes that. So the service agreement would all the meters are covered under a warranty. Okay. So the service agreement basically says if there's a malfunction, we can do it internally. However, if we do have a need to send it back, they'll be covered if they're under warranty, regardless if we purchase or lease.
Okay. And if we purchase, then how long is that warranty?
I believe it's 5 years.
I have about 5 quick questions, and I'd like to follow up on Sarah's to start with. At the end of the lease period, do we own the meters?
$1 a piece.
Okay.
We'll purchase for $1 a piece.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you some questions which may seem somewhat negative, but at first I'd like to let you know I think certain aspects of your plan are really commendable. Okay, but from what I see, you have 3 things you're going to do with this plan. One is to eliminate the option for somebody lucking out and getting a space where somebody's already paid for the spot. Is that right?
In the high intensity zone, yes.
Okay. And the second thing you're going to do is to increase the cost of the parking, the hourly cost. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and then the third thing you're going to do is to increase the hours for when the parking meter is collected. So the public is basically paying for 3 different methods an increase in parking. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated that the purpose of this is not to bring revenue to the city, although my calculations show that the city would make about $600,000 more a year. Is that about right?
If the projected revenues would be accurate.
Okay. And you also indicated that the purpose of the change was to basically increase parking so that the businesses could benefit uptown. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at the same time, because of the increased costs of parking for the citizens that they're going to have to bear, my first question for that is, don't you think that's going to have kind of a negative impact on people doing business uptown when they could certainly go to East State Street and do business for free? And then the second part of that would be, what the heck is happening with the vendor spaces that we have? For instance, again, 2 spots used today and 8 spots unused. Are they going to be included in this package? And finally, for that part, are we shifting over so that we would not have any kind of annual fee, but the vendors could use these magic things and use their computer to pay the fees and wouldn't have to complain about dealing with change all the time? Is that something you're considering?
Well, can I answer the first
Please.
part? Okay. So I think people will be more cognizant of how they park. So instead of spending $2 right out to park in a high intensity zone, I think that they will take the time to be more careful so that they aren't spending $2 when they park. If they're going to park for a half hour, maybe they're going to pay 50 cents instead of paying $2 or $1. I think they're going to be a little more cognizant. And I think that that's going to have the effect of moving people in and out of parking spaces more. And I think that is really the ultimate intent, is to keep parking available, particularly in the high intensity areas, the 2-hour parking areas, so that people can move in and out and vehicles can keep moving and people can keep coming in and doing their businesses uptown. One of the complaints that we get very often is I can't find a place to park. And I think this will help with that, especially if we are making the rates so that we are moving some people into the parking garage and we're moving another group of people into the areas that are moderate and low intensity parking that are currently very underutilized. The second part of that is we did not look too much into vending in this part, so
I think the
that is something
discussion is for another night too.
So those spaces weren't included at all?
Well, they wasn't included in the model.
Okay.
So,
Patrick,
I,
it's a great question, and I understand the intent of your question. Sure. But with this was specifically looking at the metered spaces,
Sure.
and vending was not. I should also point out that at this point, loading zones weren't part of this conversation, and
handicap.
accessible parking.
Well, now, see, those will still have the new meter heads associated with them as well. So there's some things that weren't addressed in this, but this was largely looking at smart metering of all the metered spaces.
Jeff, you have?
Just a technology question. I was wondering with the new smart meters and the new apps, does it have like a messaging service where it would inform the user that, hey, you've got 5 minutes, better get out here and either move me or put some money in the meter?
I'll have to follow up with you on that one, Councilman Wright.
It just seems
I don't know the answer
like a very logical thing to have. If you're going to have one that's messaging about, hey, we're going to have construction next week, you know, what's your step? Happy graduation, that sort of thing. This would be a hell of a lot more useful than, because I always forget how much time I got left on the meter. And I had to pay a ticket, same as anybody else. So.
Yeah, I'll find out the answer to that. Get back to you.
You want to follow up?
Yes, please. As far as the different intensities or the time limits on, if you were going to do some of those short term, how would drivers, like going down the street, know, hey, that meter has a 30-minute time limit, or the different designations, how visible would that be, and how easily identifiable as you're traveling down the street?
That's a great question, and our intent is to make it very visible by painting it a different color.
Okay.
So it would be a different color. So that was something that we were considering. It will stick out. It'll be conspicuous.
So then, like a sign explaining what the color means, or would, like.
Yeah, we have some plans in terms of signage that won't be overwhelming, but still be something that the user would see.
Another question.
Okay. This system does work in other cities, and I mean it's not inventing the wheel again.
Question about the Wi-Fi. Is that going to mean there's going to have to be little mini cell antennas spaced up and down the street to receive the signal and bounce it around and work?
No, sir. No, they work off the cellular service.
Off the cell tower. So, who will be operating the Wi-Fi then? This vendor with the smart meters?
Yes.
And who could? How to phrase it? Would it then not be possible for them to piggyback the service to do other things with other people? See what I'm saying? I mean, you have a Wi-Fi. I can use the Wi-Fi for the smart meters, and I can use it for another service over here for cellular communication.
I do know it's a closed system.
Okay.
But I don't know how it's closed. So.
It's a security question more than anything else.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I just wanted to tell you that I really liked your comment about the fact that people who work in businesses tend to take up a lot of meters in the evening while they work there, and I think I think it would be good if you could find a way to convince them to use a parking garage maybe in the evenings to free up those spaces for the businesses. And I was wondering if there might be some incentive that the city could arrange for maybe a particular floor to be available for staff at a reduced price. I think that would be, I see the mayor and I think alike again.
We do,
Okay.
especially on that topic, Member McGee. It's something that I've thought a lot about. We often see, lower and upper 5 and lower and upper 6 as being nothing but tumbleweeds sometimes. There's just not a lot of parking up there. And one of the things that I would like to explore and get serious about in earnest to not reduce the amount of customer flow into restaurant X, Y, and Z because someone's employees are parked in those spaces after 6 p.m. which is often the case, to incentivize them to use 5 and 6, and coming up with some way of doing that, which would help. It would help offset. To extend the hours to 6P, just to also make sure this is clear, when you were talking about the amount of revenue versus our current meters, is, we're also going to have to look at who is enforcing until 8 p.m. We're going to have differences in the shifts that are going on right now, so we're exploring that. So not all is just being captured and put into revenue, that some is going to offset potential, I have to be clear on that. Changes in shifts and where parking enforcement is in that realm. The two other things I just wanted to mention real quick. Deputy Service Safety Director mentioned the three different apps that are out there now, but just so we're all clear, 2 of them exist right now. The third is the IPS smart meter system. So really it would be 2 apps drawn down to 1, because right now there's 3 apps because of the pilot program, correct, Ron?
Correct.
So it would be, savings on the number of apps that parking enforcement has to deal with when they're doing their enforcement as it stands now. The last thing, and I'm glad you mentioned commerce, because it's something that I have personally reached out to several of the businesses to where I know, and I think all of you would recognize, that by and large, a customer is going to go in and get a cup of coffee, or go in and get a newspaper, or maybe go in and get a book, or get something that doesn't require a lot of time, possibly going in to get a birthday card, at one of our uptown retailers, or get your prescription filled. So we're being pretty intentional about where we're locating these shorter 20-minute parking spaces. And one of the things that I have done in talking to some of the businesses is asking them, one, would this be a benefit to you? I have yet to hear someone sit there and go, nah, I don't want it. Give me the 2s, 2-hour parking spaces. They're in line with that. They love the idea. I've also kind of taken it a step further, in that those who I have engaged with, I have asked them, if we do this and move forward with these, would you start monitoring your revenue to see if your revenue is increasing because of these 20-minute parking spaces, which gives us a great metric to see, are we successful or aren't we? And I think we're going to be, but again, those businesses that I asked, they said that we will absolutely look at a comparable from the year before there was 20-minute parking spaces versus moving into the future. So I think we have a lot of good opportunity to actually be able to show and demonstrate something if in particular, this 20-minute parking, or 10-minute for 25 cents if it works.
So I'd like to thank Paul and you for coming this evening. I'd also like to commend, people sometimes like, why do we do all this planning? The comprehensive plan. Why do we gather all this information and spend a lot of time and energy analyzing it, when this is an example of what comes out of really good planning processes and good analytics, are specific problem-solving solutions to issues that have been dogging this city for a long time. So I'd like to be able to have everybody read this over, because we just did get it this evening. And I'd also like to encourage that the number of, the number of poles is reduced, because I don't know how many people I've seen run into poles. It's really sad. And also, at one point, I think we have to look at size of our parking and look at the space size. I know that we did that on West Union. We have very big parking spots, especially compared to other cities in the region, and similar sort of dynamics that go on uptown. So, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Comment? No, I meant the audience.
Yeah. So, any questions from the audience? Okay. Yeah.
Is this going to be red?
Leslie Fleming, 1 Kent Drive, Athens. My question is, were all this to be put in place, color-coded meters, different times, and all that sort of thing, and encouraging people to use the parking garage? do you envision a public education campaign to let citizens know that these changes have taken place, and especially to encourage more usage of the garage?
Yeah, whenever we roll out really new programs like this with walk your bikes or walk your wheels, the sort of things, we always do roll out with an educational campaign.
Judith Roman, 12 Northwood Drive in Athens. I guess I just wanted to say I disagree with the 8 o'clock, moving it till 8 o'clock at night. I think there's a lot of restaurants that, people kind of go to town after that. Like I came here, I wouldn't park in that parking garage. I know you said it was safe, but I'm not going to park in that. So in order for me to come to this meeting, then I would have to pay to come to a public meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
I just want to mention with Ms. Fleming, what you were saying about the educational component. And one of the things we've also identified is that, and Deputy Service Safety Director and City Planner also kind of alluded to this, and that is kind of the wayfinding, and that people assume that the parking garage, since it says city parking garage, that it's for city employees only. Again, is changing the signage on the garage, but also we struggle with wayfinding away from the parking garage to where I don't think we have adequate signing, and that we're looking to change. And one more thing, if I'm not mistaken, that we're also exploring is vacant parking counters inside there. If you go up to some of the parking garages in Columbus, you'll see that there's a little sign saying, 263 parking spaces. So we're also exploring that as part of a parking garage retrofit, so that people, as they do know where the parking garage is and pull up to it, I think a lot of people are hesitant to pull into the parking garage because they don't know how many parking spaces are there. And so I think that will certainly be helpful for getting people into the parking garage. And Judith, to your point, one of the things we are looking at exploring with the parking garage unto itself is putting better lighting inside the parking garage, as well as color coding the floors, not the driving surface, but the walls inside there, to where it'll be a little bit easier for people to remember, I was up on blue as opposed to yellow or something along those lines. Plus it'll lighten it up somewhat inside there as well, because right now it's gray concrete.
Yeah.
But what you said, I understand.
Well, I think that this has developed into a really good discussion about all the different ways that the city helps to become more efficient and effective at some of the regulations that we have, and that they're never in stone. It can change. So I will work with Paul and Ron about when this will be brought. Please shoot any questions to me or Ron or to Paul. So thank you. That's the end of my committee.
Great. Thanks everyone tonight for the questions and the discussion. We'll stand adjourned at 7:50, and our next meeting will be on Monday, September 17th.